Chapter 25, Environmental Law. Okay, so let's talk about environmental law. There's two ways of looking at environmental law. One is common law actions and the other is statutory. The common law actions that are possible to enforce rights to a clean environment are very limited. So individuals who have suffered a harm from pollution can rely on the common law for damages or in some instances injunctions against business polluters and sometimes against individuals who are not businesses. One such type of common law action is a nuisance action. A nuisance is where a person is liable if their property if they use their property in a manner that unreasonably interferes with another's rights to use or enjoyment of their own property. So typical common law situations were things like water runoff from a plant onto somebody's private property, where the water was polluted, or even if it wasn't polluted, if it's doing damage. To obtain relief under the nuisance doctrine, the owner has to identify a distinct harm separate from that affecting the general public. This harm is referred to as a private nuisance. If it's a public nuisance, something that hurts the general population, there's no individual right to sue. That would be up to the state and the Attorney General to take action for that type of nuisance. Also, other types of torts that can be brought as common law actions include negligence and strict liability. If a person operating a business causes an injury to another person and meets that four-pronged test of a negligent tort, duty, breach of duty, causation, and injury, then you can sue them for the damages that occurred. If it was a strict liability incident, you can sue for strict liability. Lawsuits for personal injuries caused by exposure to toxic substances such as asbestos have given rise to a growing body of tort law known as toxic torts. These are usually strict liability claims or product liability claims, and you see a growing number of those. If you just watch TV and watch the lawyers who handle these cases advertise for them, you see things like talcum powder, a lot of those kinds of caused by toxic substances. And if it's an ultra-hazardous activity, of course, there's strict liability. So that pretty much covers quickly the common law torts, which are very hard to enforce and not very good remedies. As a consequence, beginning probably in the 1960s, when there was a greater awareness of the public of environmental concerns and greater pressure on government to take action to secure a safe environment, along came federal and state laws to protect the environment and individuals from being harmed by an unhealthy environment. So now all levels of government regulate to some degree the aspects of the environment. Some of these include restricting the disposal and recycling of wastes and motor vehicle emissions. There are also local zoning laws to inhibit and regulate the growth of cities and suburbs by prohibiting certain land uses. Also restricting land use to certain areas so as to protect the environment of those adjacent to those areas from harm. If you're operating a business, in some instances your development plan for your business may have to be altered in order to lessen your business's environmental impact. So at the federal level and at the state level, We have the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a governmental body where the enabling laws by Congress and at the state level by the legislative body, the General Assembly in Georgia, have created these agencies and enabled them to issue regulations controlling environmental harm. There are other federal agencies that also have a role in this, as well as state agencies, including the Department of Interior, the Department of Defense, the Department of Labor, the Food and Drug Administration, the Nuclear Regulation Commission, and on and on. Probably OSHA also has some role in that at the federal level. Okay, so in some instances, citizens can sue to enforce environmental regulations if the government agency fails to do so. And in situations where the government may go too far, citizens also can sue to stop the enforcement of those regulations which may go too far. So that ends part 1 of Chapter 25, Environmental Law.